The very first thing I did when I came back to life was go to our family's greenhouse and swap the genuine monk-blessed money tree for a worthless fake. It wasn't just a simple switch, though. I took the imitation plant and thoroughly drenched its soil in black dog's blood, a substance known in esoteric circles for its power to corrupt and curse. I did this because, in my previous life, this exact tree was the beginning of my end. Eliza, the scholarship student my fiancé Mark had taken under his wing, insisted on borrowing it. She claimed she just wanted to absorb some of its legendary good luck for an upcoming competition. From the moment it left my home, however, my world began to unravel. Every investment I made, guided by what had once been a golden intuition, failed spectacularly. My family's considerable fortune evaporated as if it had never existed. My loved ones were afflicted by a series of rare, aggressive illnesses that science couldn't explain and medicine couldn't cure. They died, one by one, in excruciating pain. All the while, Eliza, the girl who once struggled to afford her tuition, was suddenly awash in cash from a miraculous investment success, quickly becoming the business world's newest and most celebrated prodigy. On the day a hit-and-run driver ended my miserable existence, my spirit, untethered from my broken body, drifted across the city to her opulent penthouse apartment overlooking the river. I found her there, nestled securely in Mark's arms, her voice dripping with triumphant pride. "Thank you, Mark," she had cooed, her words a final spectral dagger in my heart. If you hadn't told me that money tree was her spiritual life plant, intrinsically linked to her own destiny, how could we have ever taken everything from her? Now her fortune and her future are all ours. So it all came down to the money tree. When I opened my eyes and found myself breathing again, the sunlight warm on my skin, I was standing in my bedroom on that same fateful day. It was the day Mark brought Eliza to our home to ask for the tree. "Clara, is this the lucky money tree Mark was telling me about?" Eliza's eyes were wide, her face a carefully constructed mask of innocent curiosity and awe as she stepped into the greenhouse. I had to suppress a scoff, instead arranging my features into a deliberately boastful expression. "Yep, this is the one," I said, patting a leaf. "Ever since we brought it home, my dad's biotech company stock has been on a rocket ship to the moon. This tree is the very foundation of our family's success. No one is allowed to touch it." A flicker of pure, undisguised greed crossed both of their faces simultaneously. A look of absolute, unified determination that turned my stomach. The moment the prohibitive words left my mouth, Eliza's face went chalk white. She clutched theatrically at her chest, her body starting to sway as if she were about to faint. I I can't breathe," she whispered, collapsing weakly against Mark, her eyes fluttering shut. "My heart." In my last life, this performance had sent me into a blind panic, desperate to get her to a hospital. This time, I simply crossed my arms and coldly observed her pathetic dramatics. Mark, of course, immediately caught her, then turned on me, his voice a furious roar. "Clara, look at her! Her heart condition is acting up again. How can you be so cold-blooded?" Eliza, summoning what was meant to be her last ounce of strength, reached out and grabbed the corner of my shirt. "Clara, I have a really important startup competition coming up. The doctor said I can't handle any stress." Her voice grew fainter, tears tracing clean paths down her pale cheeks. "I just want to borrow the money tree for a few days to get some of its good fortune to calm my nerves, please." It was the exact same script, word for word, as the last time. Mark's eyes were filled with righteous accusation. "Clara, aren't you supposed to be the kindest person I know? Eliza is in this state and you still won't agree?" I stared coldly at their little two-person play, a wave of profound nausea washing over me. In my past life, I had fallen for this act completely. My heart had ached for her supposed plight, and I immediately agreed to lend her the tree. The result of my kindness was catastrophic. The moment she took it, my family's luck took a nosedive. My investments were wiped out, my family members died horrible deaths, and she became a celebrated star in the business world. "No," I said. The word was clipped and cold, cutting through the heavy air of their performance. Eliza's face grew even paler, her tears beginning to fall faster. "Clara, I said no, and I mean it," I cut her off, my tone leaving no room for argument. This tree is my family's lifeline. No one touches it. Mark exploded. Clara, how can you be so selfish? Eliza is practically dying and you care more about a stupid plant? A stupid plant? I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. Mark, that's not what you were saying a minute ago. Weren't you just telling me how magical it was? How it brings incredible good luck? That silenced him. He looked flustered, his mouth opening and closing with no sound coming out. Seeing her partner falter, Eliza suddenly let go of my shirt and crumpled dramatically to the floor. Her eyes rolled back in her head, and her body began to convulse. Eliza! Eliza! Mark panicked, dropping to his knees beside her. Clara, if anything happens to her, I will never forgive you. Watching their coordinated, desperate act, a small smirk touched my lips. So, they wanted to act. Let's see who was the better actor. I walked over to the money tree, the real one stand-in, and gently stroked its vibrant green leaves. In my last life, it was only after she had stolen it that I learned its true purpose. It was my spiritual life plant, tied directly to my own destiny. Losing it meant losing everything. But this time, I had already hidden the real tree safely away. The one standing in the greenhouse was a convincing fake, and I had personally drenched its soil in black dog's blood. If she wanted it so badly, then she could have it. If you really desperately need this tree, I began, putting on a deeply troubled expression and deliberately softening my voice, then for the sake of our friendship, I suppose I could lend it to you. I paused, letting them absorb the shift. But it's our family's lifeline. My parents said it's connected to my personal fortune, and lending it to you could seriously mess with my destiny. Mark's brow furrowed in annoyance, but a glance at Eliza's pained, twitching form on the floor twisted his expression. His face cycled rapidly through a series of emotions, from concern to raw anger. We're about to get married! His voice rose from a low growl to a sharp cry. Are you just going to stand there and watch something happen to Eliza? He pointed at her, still feigning convulsions on the ground. His voice cracked, veins popping in his neck. She's in this state, and you're still worried about some stupid destiny? You're heartless. I laughed on the inside, a silent, bitter peal of vindication, but my face showed that his words had cut me deep. My eyes reddened as I slowly knelt, looking down at Eliza's pale face, pretending to have a change of heart. Well, okay, for our sake. Eliza's convulsions stopped instantly. A flicker of pure triumph flashed in her eyes before being immediately masked by a look of profound weakness again. I changed my tone, my voice becoming suddenly serious. However, to move it, we have to perform a placating ritual. Otherwise, it could damage our family's foundation. Mark, who had just started to relax, tensed up again. What kind of ritual? We'll do it. The ritual fee is $50,000. The words hit them like a bolt of lightning. The air in the greenhouse froze. Even Eliza's shallow breathing seemed to stop for a moment. Mark's face went from flushed to white to a sickly shade of purple, as if someone were choking him. His lips began to tremble, his eyes shifting from shock to rage, and then to a desperate sort of calculation. $50,000. That was almost everything he had managed to scrape together by investing with my money. His hands clenched into tight fists, his knuckles white, and a fine sheen of sweat beaded on his forehead. I could practically see the intense battle raging within him. Clara, we're family. Can't you just cover it for now? His voice shook as he tried to get me to pay for my own downfall. I was ready. I dialed the number for our family butler, whom I had already prepped for this exact moment. He answered, putting on my father's stern, authoritative voice. Nonsense. Whoever wants to borrow it pays for it. An insincere heart brings an unsettled fate. That's the rule. Hearing this, Mark's face twisted, veins bulging at his temples. He hung up the phone and shot a venomous glare at Eliza. Eliza felt his anger and flinched, but she kept a death grip on his sleeve, her lips moving, mouthing silent pleas. 50,000, Mark hissed, each word forced through clenched teeth. Tears welled up in Eliza's eyes, fat droplets clinging to her long lashes. She looked pitifully from me to Mark, a perfect picture of a damsel in distress. Mark took a deep, shaky breath and pulled out his phone. His hand was visibly shaking, his finger hovering over the transfer screen, unable to press the button. He looked up and met my gaze, his eyes filled with a final desperate plea. Clara, are you really going to do this to me? I simply stared back, my expression as cold and unyielding as stone. Seeing my resolve, Eliza got desperate. She yanked on Mark's arm, her voice a near sob. Mark, I feel so sick. I can't live without the money tree. Her voice grew weaker, her body trembling as if she might collapse for real at any moment. Mark looked at her ashen face, then at the money tree, the greed and reluctance warring in his eyes. He was in his final throes of indecision. The money or Eliza. His pride or the prize. Finally, as if all the strength had been drained from his body, his finger pressed down hard on the confirmation button. Ding! $50,000 has been received. The crisp notification sound echoed in the quiet room. It was jarring, but to me it was the sweetest music. I was ecstatic, but my face remained neutral, even a little apologetic. Eliza's heart condition made a miraculous recovery. Color returned to her cheeks, and the light was back in her eyes. Thank you, Clara, she cried, tears of joy now streaming down her face. I'll take such good care of it. I pointed to the identical fake tree in the corner. The money's here. You can take it. Remember, you have to bring it back in 3 days. Mark and Eliza approached the tree as if it were a holy relic, terrified I might change my mind. Watching them gaze with such reverence at the fake plant drenched in dog's blood filled me with an unparalleled sense of glee. Mark leaned in close to the money tree and took a deep, appreciative breath. The next second, he clapped a hand over his nose, his face contorting in disgust. What is that smell? It's like something rotting. Eliza, curious, leaned in too. The moment she got close, she started gagging. Ugh, that's such a strong smell of blood. Clara, is this tree dying or something? I was dying of laughter inside, but on the outside, my face was a mask of pure shock. What are you talking about? My voice shot up an octave, my eyes wide with feigned panic. All I smell is the fresh scent of greenery. Mark backed away, still covering his nose, his eyes full of suspicion. Clara, this thing seriously stinks like something went bad. Are you sure it's okay? His doubtful look made my heart pound with excitement. I couldn't let them get suspicious now. I suppressed my glee and put on a hurt expression. Stinks? How could it? I immediately called over the old gardener, whom I'd already bribed. Mr. Lee, could you come here and smell this money tree? Mr. Lee came over, took an exaggeratedly deep breath, and beamed with delight. Oh, miss, that's the smell of good fortune. So full of life, it smells wonderful. Mark's expression immediately became complicated, a mix of confusion and unease flickering in his eyes. I looked at them skeptically, my voice laced with obvious doubt and disappointment. That's weird. Mr. Lee smells a lovely fragrance, but you two say it stinks. Mark opened his mouth to argue, but couldn't find the words to explain the difference. Suddenly, I acted like I had remembered something, my eyes lighting up as my tone turned serious. Oh, I remember now. The monk who blessed it once said that only those with evil intentions, those who wish our family harm, would think the sacred object gives off a foul odor. As soon as I said it, both Mark and Eliza's faces changed dramatically. Mark's expression shifted from confusion to sheer terror, and sweat started to bead on his forehead. No, Clara, believe me, I would never wish you any harm. Eliza panicked too, tears instantly springing to her eyes. Clara, how could we ever hurt you? There must be some mistake. Watching them squirm, I was secretly thrilled, but I kept a troubled look on my face. But a sacred object wouldn't lie. No, Mark waved his hands frantically, his voice trembling. It must be my nose. Let me smell it again. He forced himself to approach the tree again, took a deep, gut-wrenching breath, and turned a shade of green. Now it smells fragrant. It really does. Eliza nodded vigorously, the stench making her eyes water, but she forced a painful smile. Yes. We must have had colds before. It smells so lovely now. So fragrant. I almost burst out laughing watching them choke back their disgust while heaping praise on the repulsive plant. Oh, good. The worry on my face vanished, replaced by a relieved smile. Since you can both smell the fragrance now, it means you don't have any ill will toward my family. I was really getting worried there for a second. Mark let out a breath, though a hint of doubt remained in his eyes. He asked tentatively, Clara, is this money tree really that magical? Why did we smell different things before? Of course it's magical. I nodded seriously. This is a consecrated object. It can distinguish between good and evil hearts. You smelled a stench before because your minds weren't pure. Now that you smell a fragrance, it means your hearts are cleansed. A greedy glint appeared in Eliza's eyes, which she quickly masked, her voice full of longing. So, if we take it home, will it keep its magical properties? Of course, I said, pausing for effect before my tone turned grave. However, if someone with a wicked heart stays in close contact with it, the consequences will be severe. Mark instinctively took a step back. What consequences? I lowered my voice, my eyes deep and mysterious. At best, a string of bad luck leading to financial ruin. At worst, I let the sentence hang in the air. Mark and Eliza exchanged a look, their eyes filled with apprehension and fear. But just as quickly, Eliza leaned weakly against Mark again, her voice desperate. Mark, I really need it. I'll die without it. I'm willing to take the risk. Mark looked at her pale face and finally gritted his teeth. With trembling hands, he picked up the pot containing the stinking money tree. Let's go. We're going home. As I watched them leave, cradling the fake plant drenched in black dog's blood as if it were a newborn child, I finally let myself smile. Back in the safety of my room, I turned on the microcamera hidden inside the good luck amulet I had given Eliza as a friendship gift months ago. The image was so clear it made me sick. They had placed the stinking fake tree in the center of their small apartment with the reverence of pilgrims worshiping a god. Eliza immediately bolted to the bathroom and scrubbed her hands for over 10 minutes, the water running nonstop. When she came out, her face was ashen. Mark, I can't wash the smell off. Do you think Clara knows something? Mark snorted with contempt, his expression reminding me of how he had looked in my past life as he stood over my dead body. That lovesick fool? She wouldn't have a clue. The mystic I consulted, Master Valerius, said that Clara's fate is tied to this tree. It's her spiritual life plan. I clenched my fists, so in my past life, there had been a mystic behind my miserable death. As long as we use our blood to perform the siphoning ritual, Mark's voice was laced with a cruel excitement. Her fortune, her talents, even her life force will be transferred to us. A greedy light shone in Eliza's eyes. So my startup will get funded and you'll be able to oust her father from his own company? Exactly, Mark said, pulling out several yellow paper talismans. Let's begin. I almost laughed out loud as I watched them slice their fingers and drip their own blood into the soil, already saturated with black dog's blood. Idiots. They began chanting a strange incantation, binding their own destinies to this filthy, cursed object. I switched off the monitor, feeling more exhilarated than I ever had before. The next day, Eliza called Mark, her voice giddy with excitement. Mark, the investors said yes. They said our project has a lot of potential. Her voice was dripping with smug satisfaction. Looks like this money tree really works. Mark was just as thrilled. Those old board members who are loyal to my future father-in-law were a lot softer today. I think I'll be able to kick them out soon. They caressed the money tree, beaming, their belief in its magic now absolute. They decided to keep the tree for good. That idiot Clara! I can't believe she'd just give away a treasure like this. Eliza stroked the foul-smelling fake tree, her eyes filled with greed. If she's that stupid, then this tree deserves to be ours, Mark nodded. I'll contact Master Valerius and have him help us permanently bind ourselves to this tree of fortune. That way, even if Clara regrets it and wants it back, it'll be too late. I watched their disgusting display through the monitor, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. I never expected that later that day they would kidnap me and take me to a secluded villa. To bind yourselves to the money tree, you must first sever its connection to its former master. Master Valerius announced, looking like some enlightened sage when he saw me tied to a chair. Master, what do we have to do to sever the connection and bind this fortune tree to us completely? Eliza asked impatiently. Master Valerius circled me in the fake tree a few times, then nodded sagely. Drain her blood. The fortune tree will naturally sever its ties with her. I glared at him in fury. You wouldn't dare! But Eliza and Mark weren't listening. They followed the mystic's instructions, slitting my wrist over a talisman he had drawn on the floor. As my blood dripped away, the world started to spin, my face growing paler by the second. Mark, do you have any idea you're killing me? Clara, don't be so dramatic. As soon as your connection to the tree is broken, I'll stop the bleeding. And when I'm successful, I'll never forget you. He said the words, but his eyes were glued to the fortune tree. An hour later, the binding ritual was complete. Master Valerius patted his stomach, satisfied. It is done. From this day forward, this fortune tree is linked to your bloodline. No one can ever take it from you. Eliza and Mark were as giddy as if it were Christmas. They turned to me, weak and dying, to gloat. Clara, let's see you act like a little princess now. Soon your family will be begging me for scraps. Now get on your knees and beg me. Maybe I'll be merciful enough to leave your family a way out. He hadn't even finished his sentence when Eliza's phone rang. It was her lead investor. The voice on the other end was ice cold. We're sorry, but we've decided to withdraw our funding. After further due diligence, we've found serious business integrity issues with your project. Yesterday was yesterday. Today is today. The contract isn't signed, and we have the right to change our minds. The call ended. Eliza collapsed onto the floor, tears streaming down her face. At the same time, Mark got his own bad news. Several of his father's biggest clients had simultaneously terminated their contracts, citing concerns about the company's future direction. The company's stock price immediately plummeted. This is impossible! Mark's hand holding the phone was shaking. Everything was fine yesterday. Eliza looked at the foul-smelling fake tree, a horrifying realization dawning on her. Mark, do you think it's the tree? No way, Mark denied it vehemently. Master Valerius himself said this is a genuine spiritual artifact. But reality soon delivered an even harsher blow. Over the next few days, Eliza's startup team fell apart. Key members resigned one after another, and the project completely imploded. Mark's situation was even worse. Not only did his company's performance crater, but his personal reputation was also ruined, with rumors swirling about his questionable character. I sat in a coffee shop, leisurely flipping through newspaper articles about their downfall, feeling an incredible sense of satisfaction. The power of the black dog's blood was even stronger than I had imagined. An hour later, I was in a dusty warehouse on the outskirts of the city, looking at the so-called master. He was tied to a chair, his Taoist robes wrinkled and his hair a mess. There was nothing enlightened about him now. When he saw me, his eyes went wide. Who are you? Why did you grab me? I pulled up a chair and sat in front of him, crossing my legs. Master Valerius, I've heard so much about you. His face instantly went pale. How do you know my spiritual name? I don't just know your name. I also know you taught Mark how to steal someone's destiny, I said with a cold smile. So, who put you up to it? Master Valerius's eyes darted around the empty space. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a legitimate mystic. I took my phone out of my bag and played a recording. Mark's voice came through crystal clear. Master Valerius said that Clara's fate is tied to this tree. It's her spiritual life plant. As long as we use our blood to perform the siphoning ritual, her fortune, her talents, even her life force will be transferred to us. Master Valerius's face turned sheet white. Still don't know what I'm talking about? I stood up, looking down at him. You taught them how to ruin my life. You must have had a reason. He clenched his jaw and said nothing. I walked over to a nearby table, picked up a fruit knife, and ran it lightly over my fingertip. It's fine if you don't talk. Mark and Eliza have already followed your instructions and bound their destinies to that fake tree soaked in black dog's blood. Master Valerius's head snapped up. What? A fake tree? I smiled. That's right, fake. And it wasn't just black dog's blood, I threw in some crow droppings for good measure. What do you think is going to happen to them now? His face was as pale as paper, his body starting to tremble. Impossible. I saw that money tree with my own eyes. It was absolutely real. The one you saw was real, I said, crouching down to get closer to his face. But the one I gave them was fake. Now that their destinies are bound to that filth, what do you suppose will happen? Master Valerius's pupils dilated, his voice shaking. They'll be cursed with bad luck. Maybe even what? Even death? He completely broke down. You have to stop them. Once that ritual is complete, their life force will be devoured by that cursed object. I stood up, brushing non-existent dust from my hands. That's better. Now, tell me who hired you. Master Valerius closed his eyes, his voice filled with despair. It was the Dalton family. Mr. Dalton from the Dalton Group came to me. He said he wanted me to help him deal with the Ashworth family. The Dalton Group. Memories from my past life flooded back. After my family went bankrupt, the Dalton Group was indeed the biggest beneficiary. They were vultures, buying up our core assets for pennies on the dollar and then bragging to the media about their business acumen. So, it was all their scheme, from the very beginning. How much did they pay you? I fought to keep the tremor out of my voice. $50,000. Master Valerius's voice was barely a whisper. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I was forced into it. They threatened me, said they'd kill me if I didn't help. I suddenly started laughing, the sound echoing in the empty warehouse. Forced? I knelt down, getting close to his face. Then what about when you were teaching Mark how to destroy me? When you told him how to steal my destiny and ruin my family? You didn't seem so forced then, did you? Is 50 grand all it costs to buy your conscience? My glare made him tremble. He stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. Just then, my phone rang, the sharp sound cutting through the silence of the warehouse. It was Mark. Seeing his name flash on the screen, my heart began to pound. He must have gotten to the hospital and realized I was lying. Taking a deep breath, I answered the call, intentionally lowering my voice to sound weak and shaken. Mark! Clara! I'm at the hospital, but the nurses say there's no record of your father ever being admitted. Mark's voice was full of anger and suspicion. Where the hell are you? My heart hammered against my ribs, my palms instantly slick with sweat. Crap, he found out. But I couldn't panic. I absolutely could not panic. What? How is that possible? I feigned a panicked and confused tone. I swear I saw Dad being wheeled into the emergency room. Maybe you went to the wrong hospital. Clara! Mark roared so loud I almost dropped the phone. Are you lying to me? You're not at the hospital at all, are you? I could hear his ragged, angry breaths and the sound of cars honking in the background. I could picture his face. The face I had once loved so dearly, now surely twisted in a horrible grimace. For a second, I remembered his conversation with Eliza at my grave in my past life. The agony of that ultimate betrayal washed over me again. I didn't need to pretend anymore. Yes, I lied to you. My voice turned to ice. You? Mark's voice trembled, as if he couldn't believe I'd admit it so directly. Why would you do that? Why? I let out a cold laugh that echoed through the warehouse. Because I knew you were on your way to see Master Valerius to verify if the money tree was real. The other end of the line went silent, except for the sound of the wind. How did you know? Mark's voice was now filled with a trembling horror. Mark, we've been together for so long. Is this how little you trust me? My voice grew colder, like a frozen lake. Clara, let me explain, he stammered, panicked. There's nothing to explain. With that, I hung up. I glanced at Master Valerius, who was still tied to the chair, staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. Did you hear that? I stood up, looming over him. Your little plan failed. Master Valerius stared at me, his voice shaking. You really gave them the fake tree? Of course. I turned to him, a cold smirk on my lips. I'm not an idiot. Why would I ever give them the real money tree? But your destiny. My destiny is just fine, I sneered. Theirs, on the other hand, is about to get very, very unlucky. Just then, My phone rang again. This time, it was Eliza. I looked at her name on the screen, a thrill of victory running through me. Here it comes, payback time. I answered the phone. Before I could say a word, I heard her terrified shriek. Clara, help me! I'm trapped in the elevator. It just stopped. I'm so scared. I held the phone to my ear, the smile on my face growing wider. Then, without a moment's hesitation, I hung up. I laid out all the evidence for my parents. The recording of the mystic's confession, the Dalton family's conspiracy, the call logs between Mark and Eliza. After listening to the recording, a cold fury glinted in my father's eyes. Launch a full forensic audit. I want the Dalton family completely destroyed. My mother squeezed my hand, her own voice trembling. Clara, we almost lost you. Seeing their mix of anger and heartbreak, a warmth spread through my chest. This time, I wouldn't let anyone hurt my family. To keep Mark on the hook, I called him myself. Mark, my dad's okay, but the whole family is blaming me. I made myself sob into the phone. They said lending out the money tree brought on this disaster, and now they're forcing me to bring it back for a purification ceremony. Mark was silent for a few seconds. Clara, don't cry. I'll figure something out. Really? I feigned a hopeful tone. You'll help me? Of course, how could I not help you? I hung up, a cold smile spreading across my face. 3 days later, a frantic Mark called me back. Clara, something's happened. His voice was thick with panic. My apartment was robbed. The money tree is gone. I let out a theatrical shriek. What? How could that happen? I've already called the police. They said they'll investigate, but Clara, about your family, it's over. It's all over. I pretended to have a complete breakdown. My parents are going to kill me. Mark, you have to help me find it. I will. I promise I'll find it. His comforting words came through the phone, and I had to stifle a laugh. He wanted to play games. Fine. I'd play along. A few days later, the real show began. At the university's public thesis defense, Eliza was on stage as the star student presenter. She looked radiant in a white dress, captivating the audience. Halfway through her presentation, Eliza suddenly froze, her face draining of color. Blood. There's blood everywhere. She started muttering nonsense. It stinks. It stinks so bad. The students in the audience exchanged confused glances. Eliza suddenly screamed, flailing her arms wildly. Get away! All of you, get away from me! She stumbled off the stage and ran for the doors. Help me! There are ghosts! Ghosts! Security guards rushed to restrain her, but she fought wildly, screaming about the smell of blood and crows. In the end, she was forcibly taken to a psychiatric hospital. I sat in the audience, my face a mask of shock, but inside, I was ecstatic. This was the price for trying to steal my life. When Mark heard the news, he jumped in his car and sped toward the hospital. He got stuck in traffic and, consumed by anxiety, started a fight with the driver in the next lane. Are you blind? If you can't drive, get off the road. The other driver was a huge guy with a short fuse. Mark, normally so polite, completely lost it. What did you say? Say it again. When the light turned red, the big guy got out of his car and dragged Mark out of the driver's seat. Think you're hot stuff, pretty boy? A single punch sent Mark to the pavement. Still not satisfied, the man grabbed a loose brick from the roadside and smashed it down on Mark's arm. There was an audible crack as the bone snapped. Mark's face twisted in agony, his screams echoing down the street. I got the news of Mark's hospitalization while I was visiting Eliza. Looking at Eliza, who was lying catatonic in her hospital bed, I whispered, "This is just the beginning." She stared blankly at the ceiling, endlessly repeating, "Clara? I'm sorry, Clara." I turned and left, feeling lighter than I had in years. The debts from my past life would be repaid, one by one. A few days later, a call came from an unknown number. The moment I answered, Mark's broken voice came through. "Clara, I was wrong. It was all my fault." He was sobbing, all his former composure gone. It was Eliza and that mystic. They tricked me. I was blinded by greed. I held the phone, feeling an unparalleled sense of glee. "Clara, my arm is broken. I got fired from my job. All my money is gone." His voice sank into despair. "Eliza's gone insane. She just screams your name all day at the hospital. I have nothing left, Clara. You're all I have left. Please come see me. I have something important to tell you. Something important. I almost laughed out loud. He wanted to beg now. Okay, I'm on my way. The public ward was cramped, with 6 beds squeezed into the small room. Mark was in the far corner, his right arm in a heavy cast, his face still bruised and swollen. The second he saw me, he struggled to sit up, grabbing my wrist with his good left hand. Clara, you finally came! I shook him off in disgust and took a step back. Tell me, what's so important? A glimmer of hope appeared in Mark's eyes. It was the Dalton family. It was all their idea. They promised me a VP position at their company if it all worked out. He was trembling with excitement. I can testify for you. We can take them down together. Clara, if you just forgive me, I'll do anything you want. I just stared at him and pulled out my phone. Too late. I opened a news app and held the screen in front of his face. The headline was impossible to miss. Dalton Group under investigation for massive financial fraud, corporate espionage, key executives arrested. Mark's face went completely white. He took the phone with a trembling hand, his eyes nearly popping out of his skull. Impossible. This is impossible. Mr. Dalton was arrested yesterday. I took my phone back, my voice terrifyingly calm. What value do you think your testimony has now? Mark collapsed back onto the bed, his eyes vacant. I'm finished. I'm completely finished. Yes, you are, I said, standing over him. When you and Eliza were killing my family in my last life, did you ever imagine this day would come? His head snapped up. What? Last life, Clara, what are you talking about? I laughed, tears welling in my eyes. You know what, Mark? You're the one I should thank the most. If you two hadn't been so greedy, if you hadn't stolen my family's money tree, how would I have ever seen your true colors? Mark's eyes widened, his lips trembling. Sophie, you knew all along. Yes, I knew everything, I said, wiping a tear from the corner of my eye. Including the fact that the tree you took was a fake. A fake? Mark's voice was a shrill shriek, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. The one you gave us was a fake? Of course it was fake, I sneered. I'm not an idiot. Why would I ever give you the real one? Mark tried to scramble out of bed, but the pain from his broken arm sent him crashing back down. You tricked us. You ruined us. I ruined you? My voice rose sharply. You were the ones trying to steal from my family. You were the ones who tried to destroy us. And now you have the nerve to say I'm the one who ruined you? The other patients in the ward were startled by our argument and stared over at us. Mark realized he was making a scene and lowered his voice. Clara, we were together for 3 years. Can you really be this cruel? 3 years. I laughed even louder. Mark, do you remember that rainy night 3 years ago? You told me you were on a business trip, but you were actually in a hotel with Eliza. I had a 102-degree fever and spent the whole night alone. And my birthday 2 years ago? You said you had an emergency at work, but I saw you at the amusement park with Eliza taking couple photos. A year ago, when my mom was in the hospital for surgery, you said you'd be there with me, but you took a call from Eliza halfway there and just left. With every sentence, the color drained further from Mark's face. Is that what you call our 3 years together? My voice was as cold as ice. Mark, I was the one who was lied to from the very beginning, not you. Mark opened his mouth, but no words came out. I turned to leave, pausing at the door. Oh, right. I forgot to tell you something. Eliza screams my name all day in the hospital. Do you know what she's screaming? Fear flashed in Mark's eyes. She says, Clara, I'm sorry. Clara, please forgive me. I looked back at him, my eyes filled with scorn. Seems she's a lot more clear-headed than you are. Mark pleaded. If you forgive me, we can still go through with the wedding. Our wedding? I let out a soft laugh. A flicker of hope lit up Mark's eyes. He struggled to sit up. Clara, I know I was wrong. We can start over. I'll be good to you. I watched him silently. He seemed to take my silence as a sign of wavering, his voice growing more urgent. Clara, do you remember when we first met? You said you wanted to grow old with me. We have so many wonderful memories. My heart clenched. Those memories flooded back. The first bouquet of roses he gave me, Our embrace in the falling snow, the tenderness in his eyes when he asked me to marry him. No, I couldn't soften. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to remember his betrayal. Wonderful memories? My voice turned cold, as if rising from the depths of hell. Mark froze, sensing something was wrong. I leaned in close to his ear, my voice a soft whisper. Mark, do you know what that tree you took really was? His pupils constricted. He looked like he'd been struck by lightning. It was a fake. 3 words, crashing like thunder, shattering his last shred of hope. All the color drained from Mark's face, his lips starting to tremble. No, impossible. That's impossible. I watched his terrified expression, a wave of satisfaction washing over me, mixed with something else I couldn't name. In that pot of soil, I poured Black Dog's blood. My voice grew quieter, colder. It's specifically for breaking dark magic and turning it back on its caster. Mark's body began to shake violently, as if he were hearing his own death sentence. Every drop of blood you offered, every word of the incantation you chanted wasn't stealing my destiny. I paused, watching the fear in his eyes magnify. It was binding your own lives to a pile of filth. No! Mark let out a desperate howl. That's not true! You're lying! You have to be lying! He shook his head frantically. But in the next second, all the pieces clicked into place. The horrible stench. Eliza's descent into madness. His own string of unending disasters. The truth washed over him like a tidal wave, drowning his last hopes. You knew. From the very beginning. He roared like a cornered animal, his voice tearing through the quiet ward. You venomous witch! You killed us! The other patients stared, terrified. I watched him completely fall apart, a storm of emotions churning inside me. From the moment you set foot in my family's greenhouse, I gave him his final confirmation, my voice as soft as a sigh. Mark completely snapped. He struggled wildly to get out of bed, his good hand flailing, trying to grab me. I'll kill you! I'll take you with me! In the chaos, he yanked down the IV stand beside his bed. The heavy metal base swung with momentum, crashing hard into the back of his head. There was a dull, sickening thud. Mark collapsed, and blood instantly began to stain the white sheets. He didn't get up again. Screams erupted from the other patients. I just stood there, watching Mark's motionless form on the floor. The man I once loved with all my heart had just ended his own life. Nurses and doctors rushed in, scrambling to save him, but it was too late. Tears blurred my vision. I couldn't tell if they were tears of victory or mourning for a love that was long dead. A message came through on my phone. Eliza had lost her mind completely in the psychiatric hospital. Master Valerius was sentenced to a long prison term for fraud and assault. Back home, I walked into the greenhouse. The real money tree stood there quietly, its leaves shimmering with a golden light, vibrant and full of life. My destiny, my life. They were mine again, held firmly in my own hands. From now on, no one would ever take what belonged to me. I looked at the golden glow filling the room, and a real smile finally touched my lips. This time, I won.